the first dawn over the Nile. Listen now. The desert sleeps beneath a blanket of starlight. The wind carries the breath of a river, older than empires, older than memory itself. In this quiet hour, before the first dawn ever rose, there was only the endless water, the dark and formless abyss called none. No land, no sky, no sound, only the deep stillness of eternity. Yet even in that silence, something stirred a spark of intention, a will that longed to be. Out of the nothingness a single mound of earth began to rise from the waters, the primordial hill, shining with the promise of creation. Upon that mound stood the first being, Atum, the self-created god. Alone yet complete, he was both male and female, light and shadow, all that was and all that could be. Atum looked upon the endless dark and wept for companionship. From his breath came Shu, the god of air, the first wind that ever blew. From the moisture of his body came Tefnut, the goddess of dew and rain. The twins, radiant and alive, drifted into the chaos to explore what their father had made. For a time the cosmos was without balance. The waters stretched endlessly. There was no sky to contain them, no earth to rest upon. Shu and Tefnut wandered far from Atum's sight, and loneliness fell upon the Creator again. His tears fell into the waters, and from those divine tears humanity would one day be born. But before humankind there came reunion. Shu and Tefnut returned from the endless dark, bringing with them the seeds of order. In joy Atum embraced them, and in that moment of divine unity the first light shone across the waters. The sun rose not yet, the sun we know, but a golden spark within the god Ra. Ra emerged from the horizon, radiant and complete. His eyes became the sun and the moon, and his laughter scattered the shadows. Wherever his gaze fell, land rose from the deep. He named each place, shaping the two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt, between which the great Nile would flow like a divine artery, pulsing with life. As the light spread, Ra took the form of a scarab beetle, known as Khepri, pushing the newborn sun across the sky. Each dawn was his victory, each night his death and rebirth. And thus began the eternal rhythm of time, the cycle of light and darkness that would define the Egyptian soul. The gods gathered around Ra's brilliance, and from their unity came the first order of the universe, Ma'at, truth, balance, and harmony. It was Ma'at that kept the heavens steady, that taught the Nile when to rise and fall, that kept the stars from tumbling into chaos. In the ages that followed, temples would rise to honor these divine beginnings. Priests would whisper hymns in the half-light of dawn, their words drifting like incense toward the eastern sky. Hail to you, Ra, who rises in the horizon, who shines upon the lands, who banishes the darkness. You are Khepri in the morning, Ra at noon, Atum at dusk, and the people farmers, fishermen, kings and children would watch each sunrise as a promise that life always returns, that death is not the end, that the gods still breathe through every ripple of the river. In this land of gold and sand, time itself became sacred. Each day mirrored creation. When Ra's barque set sail across the sky, it was as though the world were born anew. When he descended at dusk, the people knew he traveled through the Duat, the underworld, battling serpents of chaos so that he might rise again. This belief that every sunrise was a resurrection wove itself into every story, every heart, every grain of Egyptian soil. Atum now, older and wise, watched his children shape the world. Shu, with his arms outstretched, held the heavens apart from the earth. Beneath him, his daughter Nut, the goddess of the sky, arched her star-filled body above the world. Below her, her brother Geb, the god of earth, lay green and fertile, whispering life into seeds and roots. Each morning Nut swallowed Ra as he set in the west, and each dawn she gave birth to him again. In the east, a divine cycle of renewal that mirrored every life, every death, every rebirth in the Nile's rhythm. But creation, like the desert wind, was never still. From Nut and Geb would come new gods, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, whose stories would shape the destiny of gods and mortals alike. For now, the world rested in balance. The river flowed, the stars glowed like golden eyes across the sky. And Ra atop his sun barque smiled upon the newborn land. The Egyptians believed that in the beginning, when the first light touched the water, a sacred lotus flower bloomed on the surface of none. From within that flower, Ra rose as a child, the first sunrise in history. The petals unfolded with the warmth of creation, and the air filled with the scent of eternity. It is said that even now, when the sun rises over the Nile, it carries the memory of that first dawn. The same golden light that once touched the face of Atum, that danced upon the waves of the primordial ocean, still shines upon Egypt's deserts and temples, upon the statues of gods carved in stone. And so the story begins in water and light, in creation and rebirth. The gods awaken one by one, and the world stirs to life beneath their gaze. The river glimmers like liquid gold. The air hums with divine presence. The age of gods has begun. The breath of the world, Shu and Tefnut. The first dawn fades into soft gold. The light of Ra shimmers across the surface of the Nile, and the world breathes for the first time. The waters of none, once infinite and still, now ripple gently as the air begins to move, the breath of a god, filling the void between heaven and earth. That breath is Shu. He is the invisible wind, the first movement of creation, the rhythm that separates silence from sound. Shu spreads his arms wide, stretching the newborn sky from the tender soil of the earth. His presence is felt more than seen, a soft current over the dunes, the whisper that carries across the reeds, the sigh between each heartbeat of the world. Beside him, like the scent of rain after long thirst, drifts Tefnut, his sister and companion, the goddess of moisture, of mist and dew. She is the cool relief that follows the sun's heat, the shimmer of life upon the riverbanks. Together, Shu and Tefnut form the balance that every living thing depends upon: air to breathe, water to drink. But in those first ages, when time itself was still learning to flow, the world was vast and dark. The twins wandered far from the Creator, exploring the unshaped lands, the shadows beyond Ra's light. They sought to understand the world their father had made, but the distance grew too great, and Atum, alone again upon the primeval mound, felt the ache of their absence. He called their names into the void, but only silence answered. Fear and longing welled within him, and from that sorrow his tears fell once more into the waters. Each tear became a shining star, beacons to guide his lost children home. And so the sky was born from grief and hope. Days passed, or perhaps eternities, for in that age there was no measure of time. Then from beyond the horizon the wind stirred, and the scent of rain filled the air. Shu and Tefnut returned, their bodies glimmering with light, their voices carrying laughter and promise. The universe was whole again. Atum rejoiced and gathered them close, and from that reunion came a new harmony. Shu lifted the sky, and Tefnut spread her moisture over the land, awakening the first plants, the first animals, and the pulse of the Nile. From their union, 2 more divine beings were born, Nut, the goddess of the sky, and Geb, the god of the earth. They were bound by love, inseparable in their embrace. Nut arched her starry body above, while Geb stretched beneath her, his laughter rumbling through the fertile soil. But their closeness troubled Atum. The sky and the earth were so tightly entwined that nothing could exist between them, no air, no space, no life. The world was stifled by love, and so Atum, through Shu, commanded that they be parted. It was Shu, the gentle, sorrowful father, who obeyed. With great strength he placed himself between Nut and Geb, lifting his daughter high above his head, creating the vault of the heavens. His arms became the pillars that held up the sky, and his breath filled the space between them, the living air, the unseen bridge between gods and mortals. Nut wept as she was raised from her beloved, and her tears became rain. Geb groaned with sorrow, his body trembling with rivers and streams. From their mourning came the balance of the world, the sky above, the earth below, and the air between. Each dawn Nut reaches down to touch Geb's horizon with light, and each dusk Geb stretches upward to embrace her stars. Their love, though forever separated, endures through every sunrise and sunset, a tender promise that even distance cannot undo creation's bond. Through Shu's steady hands and Tefnut's flowing grace, life began to take form. The Nile mirrored their unity, its waters rising and falling like breath, its flood bringing renewal as the air carried the scent of life across the land. The people of Egypt would later see this divine rhythm in all things, in the beating of their hearts, the turning of the seasons, the movement of wind through papyrus. In the temples that rose along the Nile, priests would raise their palms toward the sky at dawn and whisper prayers to Shu, the unseen one. O breath of the gods who fills the lungs of all creatures, O wind that lifts the falcon's wings and cools the brow of kings, may your presence never leave the 2 lands. And to Tefnut they offered bowls of water and lotus blossoms, singing softly, mist of the morning, mother of the dew, rain that awakens the seed within the earth, flow through our hearts as you flow through the Nile. Together the pair were more than gods, they were the living rhythm of Egypt's world. Without Shu, the sky would collapse. Without Tefnut, the land would wither. The people understood that harmony, that balance between dryness and moisture, between wind and stillness, was the essence of Mawat, the law that kept the cosmos alive. As the day wanes in your mind's eye, the golden light fades over the dunes. You imagine Shu still holding the sky aloft, his form vast and unseen, while Tefnut moves among the clouds, her laughter falling as evening rain. The world they helped create breathes softly in its sleep. The Nile murmurs against its banks, the stars shimmer upon Nut's dark skin, and Atum, seated upon the first mound, gazes upon his family, the air, the water, the earth, and the sky, and knows that creation has found its balance. Through their story you begin to feel the slow pulse of the ancient world, a rhythm as steady as the Nile, as quiet as your own breath. The wind that once carried the first whisper of life still stirs tonight, flowing through time itself. And in that gentle motion, the sigh of Shu, the mist of Tefnut, the world continues to live. The lovers separated Nut and Geb. Night falls gently over the Nile, and the world glows in quiet silver. The stars emerge one by one, scattered across the heavens like sparks from a divine fire. They shimmer upon the dark arch of the sky, upon Nut, the celestial mother whose body forms the dome of the world. Beneath her stretches Geb, the green and golden god of the earth. His body is the soil, the roots, the mountains. When you hear the whisper of the desert wind, it is his breath. When you see the Nile winding through the land, it is his laughter gliding toward the sea. They are lovers, eternal, inseparable, yet destined to live apart. In the beginning, when the world was young, Nut and Geb clung to each other so tightly that no life could exist between them. The sky pressed against the earth, the air was heavy with their love, rivers could not flow, seeds could not grow. The universe waited in stillness, suffocating beneath their embrace. Atum, the creator, watched and sighed. His heart was tender, but his wisdom was vast. He knew that the world could not blossom unless the lovers were parted, and so he called upon Shu, god of air, the bridge between heaven and earth. With sorrow, Shu obeyed. He placed his hands upon Nut's shining form and lifted her high above Geb's waiting arms. She arched her back, her skin turning to deep indigo, her body adorned with stars. Beneath her, Geb stretched in longing, his laughter turning to thunder, his tears flowing as rivers. The first dawn rose between them, the light of Ra, travelling the path that Shu had created. And thus the world took its shape, sky above earth, below air, between. Yet even divine love does not end so easily. Each evening as the sun descends, Nut reaches down from the horizon to touch Geb's brow with her fading light. At dawn, Geb rises slightly, offering her the warmth of his soil. Their eternal longing fuels the rhythm of day and night, of sunset and sunrise, a cycle that never breaks. The Egyptians saw this not as tragedy but as harmony. To them, separation was not loss, but balance, the tension that holds creation in place. Without distance, there is no space to live, no breath, to draw no movement of time. The gods taught that love must also learn to let go so that the world may thrive. In the temples of Heliopolis, priests would look to the heavens and whisper hymns to Nut, the star mother who shelters all souls. Hail, Nut, who spreads herself above us. You whose laughter is the sound of the wind, whose tears fall as rain upon Geb's body. Enfold us in your starry arms. And to Geb the farmers prayed as they pressed their hands into the black earth of the Nile Valley. O Geb, father of the harvest, your breath brings life to the seed, your laughter feeds our cattle, let your strength rise with the flood. Each year, when the Nile swelled and overflowed its banks, the people believed it was Geb's joy, his reunion with Nut through the tears of the sky. In those moments, heaven and earth touched once more, and the fields of Egypt came alive with green and gold. But Nut's story is more than love. She is the gate of the afterlife, the one who swallows the sun at dusk and gives birth to it again at dawn. Her body, curved across the heavens, is both cradle and tomb womb and vault. The stars are her children, and she keeps them safe until their time comes to shine. It was said that each night, as Ra sailed his golden barque into the underworld. He entered through Nut's mouth. She swallowed him whole, guiding him through her body, through the 12 hours of darkness, through trials and monsters, through the winding rivers of the Duat. And when he emerged at dawn, it was through her womb, reborn, radiant, victorious over the shadows. Thus Nut was not only the mother of gods, but also the mother of eternity itself, the endless cycle of death and renewal. From her union with Geb came 4 divine children, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, the gods who would shape the destiny of Egypt's mythic age. Their births, however, were not simple, for when Ra, the great sun god, learned that Nut was pregnant, he grew fearful of the power her children might wield. In his jealousy, Ra cursed her, "No child of Nut shall be born on any day of the year." But Nut was wise, and she sought counsel from Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and time. Thoth, clever and kind, challenged the moon to a game of dice, wagering pieces of its light. He won enough brightness to create 5 extra days that existed outside the year, belonging to no god, no curse. On those sacred days, Nut gave birth to her children. On the first day, Osiris, the green god of life and rebirth. On the second, Horus, the elder, the sky god. On the third, Set, lord of storms and deserts. On the fourth, Isis, goddess of magic and motherhood. On the fifth, Nephthys, gentle guardian of the dead. These divine births filled the world with power and purpose, setting into motion the great dramas of Egyptian mythology. Yet even as their children grew and the world expanded, Nut and Geb remained apart, forever longing, forever united in spirit. If you listen closely, you can still hear them, the soft rumble of distant thunder, Geb's laughter echoing through the earth, the twinkle of stars over the desert, Nut's eyes watching from above. Between them flows Shu's breath, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of dawn. And so the sky and the earth remain lovers, separated by duty, bound by love, sustained by longing eternal in their devotion. Every night when you gaze upward, you are seeing Nut's starry body stretching across the world, holding within her the secrets of life, death, and the endless rebirth of the sun. The Egyptians believed that when one died, Nut would welcome them into her embrace, wrapping their souls among the stars. For her love was not bound to the living alone, it was the love of the cosmos itself, the love that endures beyond time. Above and below heaven and earth breathe in unison. Their story continues in every dawn, every river's flow, every grain of sand warmed by the sun. The lovers are still there, just as they were at the beginning, forever apart, forever together. The light of Ra, Lord of the Sun. Dawn spreads across the horizon like molten gold, and the desert awakens beneath the steady hum of the Nile. The first rays touch the sand, and the air shimmers a whisper of warmth after the cool silence of night. Somewhere above the line of light, a barque of pure fire glides through the sky. Upon it stands Ra, the sun, God Lord of the living Father of the gods, the unblinking eye that watches over all creation. Ra's story is the story of every sunrise, the eternal rhythm of life, death, and rebirth that governed the world of the Egyptians. To them, the sun was not just a star, but a divine being sailing across the heavens by day and through the underworld by night. His journey was the pulse of the cosmos, the very heartbeat of existence. At the dawn of creation, Ra emerged from the waters of Khnum as a child born within the blossoming petals of the sacred lotus flower. His cry scattered the darkness. His light awakened the sleeping gods. He looked upon the newborn world, the mountains, the rivers, the green banks of the Nile, and declared himself the ruler of heaven and earth. Every morning Ra rose in the east as Khepri, the scarab god of the dawn, pushing the glowing orb of the sun before him as a beetle rolls its ball of life. At midday he became Ra Harakti, the falcon, soaring high above the world in radiant strength. At sunset he took the form of Atum, the weary god, who descends into the west old and wise, preparing for the journey through the night. This daily transformation, birth, life, death, and rebirth, mirrored the rhythm of all living things. The Egyptians looked to Ra's path and saw their own reflection from youth to power, to rest, from light into shadow, and from shadow back into light. Yet Ra's voyage was never peaceful. Each night as the sun dipped below the horizon, he entered the Duat, the underworld, aboard his solar barque. There he faced the endless darkness and the enemies that sought to devour him, spirits of chaos, forgotten gods, and above all, the great serpent Apophis. Apophis, or Apep, was the embodiment of disorder, a serpent vast as eternity, coiling through the black waters, waiting to strike at the god of light. Each night, when Ra's boat glided across the underworld's rivers, Apophis rose to attack his mouth, gaping wide enough to swallow the sun. The battle was terrible. The underworld thundered with sound, the stars trembled in their courses, but Ra was not alone. With him sailed loyal gods and spirits, set fierce and defiant, stood at the prow to strike at Apophis with a spear of fire. Thoth, wise and serene, spoke words of power to renew Ra's strength. And countless other deities guided the barque through the perilous night. In the depths of darkness, when all seemed lost, Ra's heart blazed brighter than ever. His light pierced the serpent's coils, scattering chaos back into the shadows. Then slowly the boat rose from the underworld and the horizon began to glow. The Egyptians believed that at that moment when Ra triumphed over Apophis, the world was reborn. Every sunrise, every beam of morning light that kissed the temples of Egypt was proof that Ra had won once again. The priests of Heliopolis, Ra's sacred city, greeted this triumph each dawn with hymns that drifted through the corridors of their temples like golden smoke. Hail to you, Ra, who rises in the horizon, shining in truth and beauty. The sky rejoices at your coming, the earth dances in your light. You renew the world with every breath. At midday, when Ra reached the height of his power, the people worked in his strength. The farmers bent beneath his light as they sowed their fields. The fishermen offered prayers before casting their nets. The Pharaoh himself, called son of Ra, ruled as the living reflection of the sun's authority. To the Egyptians, Ra was not just a god of light, but the source of Ma'at, the divine order that governed all things. His journey across the sky was not simply motion, but the maintenance of balance. Without Ra, chaos would swallow creation. Without his daily renewal, the world would fall into endless night. In the deep stillness of evening, when the sun began to lower, the tone of their prayers changed. The hymns became softer, slower, a song of farewell. You set upon the western horizon, O Atum Ra. The earth grows silent in your absence. May your journey through the night be safe. May your enemies fall before your light, that you may rise again in peace. As the sun disappeared, Ra descended into the embrace of Nut, the sky goddess. She swallowed him whole, carrying him through the 12 gates of the night, each guarded by spirits and stars. Within her body, he passed through realms of shadow and flame, meeting the souls of the dead, granting them warmth and hope. At the darkest hour before dawn, when even the stars seemed to fade, Ra reached the farthest edge of the Duat. There, waiting in silence, was Apophis once more. The serpent lunged hissing with the fury of chaos, but Ra, his heart unyielding, struck with light pure as fire. Apophis screamed and fell back into the void. The barque rose swiftly toward the horizon, and the first light of morning began to glimmer. Ra emerged reborn, his golden crown shining over the waters, the lotus blooming once more. And so day after day, the cycle continued, a promise that even in darkness there is renewal. Even in death there is rebirth. The Egyptians found peace in this rhythm. They saw in it the secret of their world, that the universe is not still, but forever in motion, balanced between light and shadow, order and chaos. To live in harmony was to walk in the path of Ra, to rise and fall, to endure and begin again. When you stand beneath a sunrise, watching the first light touch the land, you are seeing what they saw, the victory of Ra, the triumph of life. His journey is eternal, a golden circle drawn across the heavens. And somewhere in the silence between heartbeats, you can almost hear the sound of his barque gliding through the sky, the soft creak of divine wood, the whisper of wind on its sails, and the faint murmur of a hymn older than time. Hail Ra, who rises again, Lord of eternity. Keeper of the light, your coming is life. Your going is peace. Shine upon us always. The hidden one, Amun, king of the gods. As the sun, god Ra, sails endlessly across the sky, there is another presence, quiet, unseen, yet no less powerful. He is Amun, the hidden one, the god whom eyes cannot behold, yet whose breath moves through every grain of air. In the golden age of Egypt, when cities rose along the banks of the Nile and temples crowned the deserts, Amun's name began as a whisper and grew into thunder. He was born not of flame or storm, but of silence. Long before he was worshipped as king of the gods, Amun was the local deity of Thebes, a city cradled between cliffs and river. Thebes was far from Heliopolis, the seat of Ra's brilliance, yet the Thebans felt a sacred pulse of their own, a divine mystery that stirred in their hearts, quiet and unseen. To them Amun was the invisible breath behind the wind, the spirit that filled the sails of ships, the god who moved unseen through both heaven and man. Amun's name itself means the hidden one. He was the god who cannot be measured, the mystery behind existence. In the beginning, the people imagined him as the invisible wind that carried life. He was not the shining disk like Ra, nor the river like Hapi, nor the earth like Geb. He was something deeper, the power that moves all things yet is bound to none. As Thebes grew, so too did Amun's importance. His priests spoke of him as not merely a local spirit, but the very essence of creation itself, the unseen source from which even Ra drew his light. And as Egypt's rulers rose from Thebes to command the two lands, they carried Amun's name upon their crowns. The pharaohs of the new kingdom, mighty conquerors and builders, called themselves beloved of Amun. Their victories were his victories. Their temples were built in his honor. In the heart of Thebes, beside the slow curve of the Nile, the temple of Karnak rose like a city of stone, a forest of colossal columns. their tops carved like papyrus blossoms reaching toward the heavens. Each column bore inscriptions praising the god who was both everywhere and nowhere. Hail to you, Amun-Ra, Lord of the thrones of the two lands, Father of fathers, hidden in all things, whose form is beyond imagining. For by this time Amun had become joined with Ra-Amun-Ra, the supreme god of Egypt, the union of hidden and visible, of silence and light. Ra was the sun that could be seen blazing across the sky. Amun was the unseen spirit within that light, the mystery behind its glow. Together they embodied the two halves of divinity, the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknowable. The Egyptians understood that what is most powerful often cannot be seen. Just as the wind shapes the dunes, just as the breath gives voice, Amun shaped the cosmos without being visible within it. The priests said that Amun's true form was beyond comprehension, that all other gods were but reflections of his hidden essence. Even the greatest pharaohs bowed their heads before him. When they entered the vast hypostyle hall of Karnak, where light and shadow danced across stone, they could feel his presence. The air itself seemed alive, filled with a quiet pulse, as though the god's invisible heart beat within the walls. In sacred processions, Amun's image was carried upon a golden barque, veiled and hidden, never exposed to the full gaze of the crowd. The priests chanted as they bore him along the avenue of sphinxes that led from Karnak to the temple of Luxor. Incense filled the air. Music drifted like a dream. The people knelt and whispered his many titles. The hidden flame, the silent one, he who comes at the voice of the poor. That last title, he who comes at the voice of the poor, was perhaps the truest reflection of his nature. Unlike some gods who ruled from afar, Amun was believed to hear every prayer. He was the unseen protector of all, king and laborer, priest and fisherman alike. His worshippers said when the cry of the humble reaches him, he comes from afar. He saves the weak from the strong. He gives breath to those who have none. In his hiddenness lay his compassion. He did not need to be seen to be near. He did not need temples to dwell within the hearts of his people. Yet his temples grew larger, his name mightier. The power of Thebes spread across Egypt, and Amun's priests became among the most influential men in the land. Kings built obelisks that pierced the heavens, engraved with praises to him. Queens, too, devoted their hearts, most famously Hatshepsut, who called herself the daughter of Amun, and built a temple at Deir el-Bahari to honor her divine father. In the evening, when the desert wind swept across the Nile, the people would hear the rustling of reeds and believe it was Amun himself whispering through the papyrus. The air cooled, the stars emerged, and the golden temples of Thebes seemed to glow from within, alive with the hidden fire of their god. And so the Egyptians came to believe that even the brightest light has a mystery at its heart, that the sun's fire hides a quiet flame within it, that all things visible are born from what cannot be seen. Amun's story teaches the truth that the Egyptians lived by power need not roar. Divinity need not be seen. As the world falls silent at the edge of night, you can almost feel him in the air around you, not as a voice, not as a figure, but as presence itself. The hidden one, eternal and unseen, still moves through the winds of Egypt, across the temples of Karnak along the river that gleams like polished bronze beneath the moon. And though his temples have turned to stone and his priests to dust, the breath of Amun, the invisible wind of creation, still drifts through the world. It fills the sails of every ship, the lungs of every living thing. It whispers through the desert, unseen yet unending. The God who was hidden is never truly gone. Death, rebirth, and the green god Osiris. The Nile drifts through twilight, its waters dark and endless as time. Along its banks the reeds sway like whispering souls. The people of ancient Egypt looked upon this river and saw the heartbeat of their world, the giver of life, the mirror of the heavens. But they also saw within it a deeper mystery, a reflection of death, of loss, and of the promise that life always returns. This truth was embodied in Osiris, the green-skinned god of the afterlife, the judge of souls and the bringer of rebirth. Osiris was the son of Nut and Geb, born on the first of the 5 sacred days that existed outside of time. From the moment of his birth, he shone with grace and wisdom. When he grew, he became the first king of Egypt, a just and noble ruler who taught humanity the arts of civilization. He taught them to sow the grain, to shape the stone, to honor the gods, and to live by Ma'at, the divine order. Under his rule, Egypt flourished. The rivers flowed in harmony, the fields bore fruit in abundance, but in every tale of harmony there waits a shadow. Osiris had a brother, Set, the god of chaos storms of the burning desert. Where Osiris ruled the fertile valley, Set claimed the desolate sands, and in his heart jealousy grew like a poisonous weed. Set looked upon Osiris's kingdom lush, ordered, full of love, and saw his own loneliness reflected back at him. He longed to overthrow his brother and seize the throne, and so he began to weave a plan born of cunning and cruelty. He held a great feast in honor of the king, inviting all the gods and noble spirits of Egypt. Music filled the hall and laughter echoed through the air. In the midst of the revelry, Set unveiled a magnificent chest of cedar and gold, its craftsmanship divine. Whoever fits this chest perfectly, he declared, shall have it as a gift. One by one the guests tried to lie within it, but none matched its form. At last Osiris stepped forward, smiling kindly at his brother. He lay down inside the chest, and it fit him perfectly. In that instant, Set and his followers slammed down the lid and sealed it tight with molten lead. The laughter fell silent. The chest was thrown into the Nile, where it drifted away into the night, carrying with it the lifeless body of the god-king. The river mourned, its waters darkened, its song turned to sorrow. Egypt fell into despair. Without Osiris, the land grew barren, the crops withered, and the hearts of men grew cold. But love in this world of gods and mortals was never easily defeated, for Osiris had a Queen Isis, his beloved sister and wife, goddess of magic and healing. When she learned of his death, she wept until the Nile overflowed her tears, mingling with the river's sorrow. She vowed to find him no matter how far the waters carried him. For many nights she searched the length of the Nile, her wings beating softly over the marshes, her voice calling through the reeds. At last she found the chest carried by the current to the shores of Byblos, a city far beyond Egypt's borders. There it had become lodged within the trunk of a great tree which had grown around it, strong, tall, and sacred. Isis entered the city in disguise, her divine light hidden beneath mortal form. With patience and grace she won the favor of the queen, who allowed her to stay. In secret, Isis revealed her true nature and begged for the chest to be returned. The queen, moved by her sorrow, granted her wish. With the chest reclaimed, Isis brought Osiris's body back to Egypt and hid it among the marshes of the Nile delta. There she began the ancient rites, whispering words of power, weaving spells of life, breathing her divine magic into his still heart. But Set discovered her hiding place. In fury, he tore open the chest, seized Osiris's body, and in a fit of rage dismembered him into 14 pieces, scattering them across the land and river. Isis did not despair. With her sister Nephthys she searched once more, gathering each fragment of Osiris, each piece representing a sacred region of Egypt. Wherever a part of him was found, a shrine was built, marking the unity of the two lands. When at last she had found them all, she bound him together again and breathed the breath of life into him. Osiris awoke, not as king of the living, but as lord of the dead. His body had changed his skin, now the green of fertile earth, his crown adorned with white and red, the symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt. He descended into the Duat, the underworld, where he would reign as eternal judge. There he sat upon his throne in the Hall of Two Truths, surrounded by gods and spirits, watching over the souls of men. When a mortal died, their heart was weighed upon the scales against the feather of Mahat, the symbol of truth. If the heart was light, the soul was welcomed into the field of reeds, the paradise of the afterlife. If it was heavy with sin, it was devoured by the monster Amit, and the soul ceased to be. Through Osiris, death was no longer an ending, but a passage. His story gave the Egyptians faith that life and death were bound in a single cycle, like the Nile's flood, and retreat like the setting and rising of the sun. Every spring, when the river swelled and the fields turned green, the people saw in it the resurrection of Osiris. They offered grain and flowers, singing hymns of renewal. Hail to you, Osiris, green of skin, Lord of life and death. Your body is the earth, your breath the Nile. You rise again with every flood, you live in every harvest. And so Osiris became the symbol of hope, the eternal promise that what dies shall live again. His spirit moved through every blade of grass, every drop of water, every breath drawn by the living. As the night deepens, imagine his realm, the cool, silent waters of the Duat, the stars reflected upon an endless river. Osiris seated upon his throne, calm and eternal, his eyes gentle yet powerful. Around him the souls of the righteous walk among fields of endless grain, their laughter soft as the wind. He is death, yes, but he is also life. In Osiris the Egyptians found the great truth that even in the darkest night there is the promise of dawn, and through him the world forever renews itself green, fertile, eternal. The Queen of Magic, Isis, Mother of Egypt. The moon rises softly over the Nile's silver light, spilling across the rippling water. The night air is gentle, and the sound of the river mingles with the distant rustle of palm leaves. In this sacred stillness a name is whispered on every breeze, Isis, the Great Mother, the Queen of Magic, whose love shaped the heart of Egypt. Her story is the tender echo of Osiris's, the tale of devotion that outlasted death itself. Isis, daughter of Nut and Geb, was born on the 4th day of the 5 sacred days outside of time. Even as a child among the gods she was wise and compassionate. Her eyes shone with the light of the moon, and her voice carried calm over the restless desert. When she and her brother Osiris came of age, their bond deepened into a sacred union. Together they ruled over Egypt in harmony, he the king of life, she the queen of healing, protection, and love. Isis taught her people the art of medicine, of weaving, and of sacred speech. She showed women how to grind the grain, how to sing to the river so that it might bless the fields, how to cradle the sick until they healed. But above all, she taught them that compassion was power, that even the gods must bow to love. When Osiris was murdered by his brother Set, it was Isis who refused to surrender to grief. Her tears, which filled the Nile and brought forth its flood, were not of despair but of determination. She became the living symbol of divine endurance, the mother who would never abandon her child, the wife who would never abandon her love. In the quiet marshes of the Nile Delta, she searched for her husband's body, guided by the cries of sacred birds and the glimmer of starlight upon the water. The people said that even the wind fell silent as she passed, for all creation wept with her. When at last she found Osiris enclosed in the chest of gold, she gathered him into her arms. She knelt beside the river and sang the ancient words, the Heka, the speech of magic, the language that existed before time, the voice of creation itself. Awake, my beloved, the sun has set, but shall rise again. Return from the shadows, for love calls you home. Her magic stirred the air, and her tears shimmered like crystal. The reeds swayed as though listening to her song, and the stars themselves leaned closer to watch. For in her sorrow, Isis became more than goddess. She became the living embodiment of every heart that loves and loses and still hopes. When Set found what she had done and tore Osiris apart, scattering him across the Nile, Isis did not curse the heavens. She rose again. With her sister Nephthys she searched from one end of Egypt to the other, gathering each piece of her husband's body. Each time she found one, she sang softly, blessing the land where it lay. Thus were born the sacred shrines of Osiris, scattered like stars across the two lands, places of prayer, of offerings, of the unbroken bond between life and death. When she had gathered all but one part, Isis called upon the jackal-headed god Anubis to help her bind him together. He wrapped Osiris in linen and oils, crafting the first mummy, and Isis breathed upon him again. Life returned to his lips, and for a single night Osiris lived once more. From that union Isis conceived a son, Horus, the falcon-eyed god, who would avenge his father and restore balance to the world. Knowing that Set still prowled in fury, Isis fled to the marshes of the delta, hiding her newborn child among the reeds. There in the whispering cradle of the Nile, she raised him in secret. She nursed him beneath the moonlight, sang him lullabies of the gods, and shielded him from serpents and scorpions with spells of protection. The people of Egypt came to see her not only as a goddess, but as the mother of all. Every woman who held her child in the dark of night prayed to Isis. Every widow who wept for her husband whispered her name. Every healer, every midwife, every mother saw in her the reflection of their own strength, quiet, steadfast, eternal. Her symbol was the throne, for she was the seat upon which kings and gods found their power. Even the pharaohs who claimed descent from Ra bowed to her as the true mother of their right to rule. Isis's magic was not the magic of thunder or flame. It was gentler, deeper, the magic of words of will, of unwavering love. She showed humanity that the greatest power of all lies in devotion, in the strength to endure when the world turns dark. In the temples of Phili, Dendera, and Abydos, her priests and priestesses sang hymns that filled the night air with reverence. Hail Isis, the Great One, Mother of the gods, Lady of the heavens, you who know the hearts of men, you whose wings shelter the living, whose tears bring life to the earth. They told that when the wind sighs across the Nile, it is her breath. When the lotus opens with the dawn, it is her smile. When the river floods each year, it is her grief turned to blessing. In every corner of Egypt, Isis's image stood, her arms outstretched like wings, offering comfort to all who sought her. Travelers carried her amulets for protection. Sailors painted her eyes upon their ships to watch the horizon. Mothers whispered her name before sleep, asking her to guard their children through the night. As centuries passed, her worship spread far beyond Egypt. Across the Mediterranean, in Greece, Rome, and even the far lands of Gaul, her name was spoken. Her temples rose wherever hearts yearned for healing and love. In every age, she remained the same, the goddess who mends what is broken, who brings the lost safely home. And tonight, as you listen, she still moves among the stars, her wings unfurled, her gaze eternal. Her love is the river that never dries, the moon that never fades. She whispers across the ages, I am all that has been, that is, and that will be. No mortal has ever lifted my veil. Her story is the heartbeat of humanity itself, the promise that love patient and steadfast can overcome even death. And when you close your eyes, you might hear her voice gentle as the Nile's current, singing through time. Do not fear the darkness, for I have walked its depths. I am the light that waits beyond the veil, the mother of kings, the guardian of dreams, Horus and the serpent of the desert. The triumph of light. The dawn returns once more, golden light spilling over the marshes of the Nile. The reeds tremble with the morning breeze, and among them a child stirs, the son of Isis and Osiris, born of love and loss, hidden from the eyes of his father's murderer. His name is Horus, the falcon of the sky, the avenger of his father, destined to restore harmony to Egypt. From his birth, the air around him shimmered with power. His eyes, bright as twin suns, seemed to reflect both day and night, one the golden orb of the morning, the other the silver of the moon. In his wings was the promise of order restored, of balance returned after chaos. But childhood for the son of Isis was not peaceful. His mother, fearing the wrath of Set, raised him in secret in the delta's shadowed marshes. By day she hid him beneath the shelter of the reeds. By night she sang him spells of protection, her voice soft as the current. The scorpions and serpents that crept through the mud turned away for the name of Isis, bound them in fear. Yet danger was never far. Set, the god of storms, whose heart was a desert wind, searched for the child ceaselessly. He could not bear the thought that the son of Osiris still lived, that the one destined to avenge him might one day rise. And so he sent spies, shadows, beasts, and venomous spirits to hunt the marshlands. But the gods watched over Horus. Thoth, the wise ibis-headed god, brought him knowledge and counsel. Nephthys, the gentle sister of Isis, guarded him through dreams. And when the child fell ill from the poison of Set's serpents, Isis healed him with her breath, her hands glowing with the light of life. "Rise, my son," she whispered, "for you are the heir of heaven. The falcon must take flight, for the storm cannot last forever." And so Horus grew strong and swift, wise and patient. His wings stretched across the horizon, and his voice echoed like the cry of a falcon above the dunes. When he looked upon the desert, he saw not emptiness, but the battlefield of destiny. He would not remain hidden forever. When he came of age, Horus rose from the marshes and journeyed south to confront his uncle Set the usurper, who sat upon Osiris's throne. The gods gathered to witness this moment, a cosmic trial, not just between nephew and uncle, but between order and chaos, light and storm. The council of gods was presided over by Ra, whose light touched all. Around him sat Thoth the scribe, Ma'at, the keeper of truth, and others, wise and ancient. Isis herself stood before them, her heart steady as the river. She spoke of justice, of the wrong that had been done, of Osiris slain and dismembered, and of her son's right to rule the living world. Set laughed a sound like thunder breaking the desert. "The world belongs to the strong," he said. "Let this child prove his worth if he dares." And thus began the contendings of Horus, and set the trials that would determine who should rule Egypt. They fought upon the sand, their forms towering like storms over the dunes. Set became a red hippopotamus, fierce and raging, while Horus took the form of a golden falcon swooping down with talons of sunlight. The sky roared with their fury, the river surged with their struggle. For days and nights the battle raged, not only in the physical world, but within the hearts of gods and mortals alike. For Set was not only destruction, he was also the necessary storm that tested creation's strength. Horus was not merely vengeance, he was the courage to endure that storm. There came a time when the gods, weary of the conflict, declared that the matter should be settled through trials of wit and endurance. In one, Set invited Horus to feast, plotting treachery. In another, they raced in boats made of stone upon the Nile sets, sinking beneath the waves, Horus's gliding like gold upon the water. At last, Set's anger grew too great. In a final battle, he struck at Horus and tore away his eye, the eye of Horus, the sacred symbol of perception and protection. Blood and light mingled as it fell to the sand, and the world dimmed for a moment. But Thoth, god of wisdom, descended and restored the eye. He healed it and gave it back to Horus, making it even stronger than before. From that day onward, the eye of Horus became the sign of wholeness, of restoration, of the victory of light over darkness. With his restored sight, Horus turned upon Set and drove him back into the desert, banishing him to the dry lands where chaos dwelled but could not rule. The balance was restored. The Nile flowed again with calm. The crops grew green under the gaze of the falcon god. The gods crowned Horus as king of Egypt, uniting the two lands beneath his wings. His crown bore the white of Upper Egypt and the red of Lower Egypt, symbolizing unity and peace. And though Set was defeated, he was not destroyed. For even the Egyptians knew that chaos must exist not as an enemy, but as a reminder that order is never eternal. It must be renewed each day like Ra's sunrise over the horizon. In his wisdom, Horus allowed Set to live, giving him dominion over the desert and the thunder, the wild forces that test the strength of life. Thus, even in defeat, Set remained part of the world's balance. The people rejoiced. They saw in Horus not only a king, but a protector. They carved his image upon temple walls, the falcon spreading his wings over the pharaoh, guarding him from harm. His eye, the Wedjat, was painted on tombs, jewelry, and ships to guide and safeguard all who journeyed through the dangers of life and death. Each year, during the Festival of Victory, the priests of Edfu would reenact the great battle, Horus rising in triumph, Set fleeing to the western sands, and the people chanting, "The falcon rises, the storm is broken, light has conquered the dark," and as the chants faded into the hum of the wind, they remembered that this was not only a myth, but a truth of the heart, that every sunrise is a victory, every breath a triumph over the night. Even now, when the sun climbs over the eastern horizon, you can imagine Horus taking flight once more, wings cutting through the dawn eyes, bright and watchful. The light that fills the world is his gift, the proof that order endures, that chaos has not prevailed. His eye still watches over the Nile, over every child of Egypt, over every soul that seeks balance and courage in the face of darkness. And as the light spreads across the waters, you can almost hear the whisper of his mother's voice, Isis, carried by the wind, "Fly, my son. The world is yours to guard. The light must never fade." The judgment of the dead, Anubis, Thoth, and Ma'at. Night descends again upon the Nile. The golden light fades, and the desert turns to silver and shadow. The stars emerge one by one across the body of Nut, and in that sacred silence another world awakens, a world unseen beneath the sands, where the souls of the dead begin their eternal journey. The Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a passage, a crossing from the world of sunlight into the realm of eternity. There, beyond the horizon, every soul would stand before judgment. And in that solemn place, three divine presences watched over the fate of all: Anubis, the guide of souls, Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, and Ma'at, the goddess of truth and balance. The journey began the moment breath left the body. The deceased was prepared with care, washed, anointed, wrapped in linen, and blessed with spells from the Book of the Dead. Priests spoke sacred words to awaken the spirit, to remind it of its name, its life, and its heart. The jackal-headed god, Anubis, dark and patient, stood beside them, his presence both solemn and gentle. Anubis was the protector of the dead, the guardian of the tomb, and the master of the art of embalming. His black fur symbolized both the color of fertile soil and the night of eternity, not death as despair, but death as renewal. When the time came, it was Anubis who would guide the soul through the winding paths of the Duat, the underworld. His hand rested upon the heart of the traveler, steadying their fear. The air grew cool, the stars above dimmed, and the gates of the underworld opened before them, guarded by serpents, lions, and spirits who asked the names of the gods. To pass safely, the soul had to know each one. Finally, Anubis led the soul into the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris sat upon his emerald throne, crowned with white and red. The hall glowed with an unearthly light, filled with the presence of gods and spirits. Among them stood Ma'at, serene and radiant, a single feather of truth upon her brow. It was here that the greatest test awaited, the weighing of the heart. In Egyptian belief, the heart was the seat of a person's soul, the vessel of memory, intention, and conscience. It carried the weight of one's deeds, both kind and cruel. It could not lie, even when the lips might. Anubis lifted the heart from the chest of the deceased and placed it upon one side of a great golden scale. On the other side he laid the feather of Maat, the symbol of divine truth, justice, and cosmic balance. Silence fell. The soul waited trembling as the scales began to sway. If the heart was light balanced with the feather, it meant that the person had lived in harmony with Maat that they had spoken. Truth acted with compassion and honored the gods. In that case, the soul would be pronounced justified and welcomed into the eternal paradise known as the Field of Reeds. But if the heart was heavy, weighed down by lies, greed, or cruelty, the scale would tilt, and the soul would face annihilation. The monstrous creature Amit waited nearby, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, the devourer of the unworthy. One by one the heavy hearts were cast to her jaws, and those souls vanished forever denied of rebirth. It was a judgment not of vengeance but of order. For in Egyptian thought, Maat was the foundation of all truth, justice, harmony, and the balance between God's men and nature. Even the pharaohs who claimed divine blood were bound by her law. The universe itself existed because Maat was maintained. When the weighing was done, the ibis-headed god Thoth, the divine scribe, stepped forward. His hands held a reed pen and a scroll of pure light. Calm and precise, he recorded the verdict, inscribing it upon the eternal record of the gods. Thoth was the god of writing, knowledge, and time, the one who measured the movements of the stars, who calculated the rhythm of the moon, who gave humanity the gift of language. His words shaped reality, for what was written could not be undone. It was Thoth who guided the priests in the sacred arts, who taught the pharaohs wisdom, who ensured that the laws of Maat were remembered. And so in this final judgment it was he who bore witness, his voice serene, his words eternal. The heart is pure. The scales are balanced, the soul is true of voice. With those words the gates of paradise opened. The soul, now free of fear, followed Anubis once more through the fields of eternal peace, where the Nile shone brighter than gold, where the air was forever cool and fragrant, where one could live as in life, but without pain or time. There, under the watch of Osiris, the righteous tilled fields that never withered, sailed boats upon waters that never stilled, and sang hymns to the rising sun. This was the Field of Reeds, Egypt's vision of heaven, a place of eternal harmony, reflection, and joy. But the journey was not only for kings or priests. The Egyptians believed that every person, no matter how humble, could enter the paradise of Osiris if they lived according to Maat, if their heart remained light, their actions honest, their words kind. In this belief lay the quiet beauty of Egyptian faith. The same truth that guided the stars and rivers guided the hearts of men. To live rightly was to help the sun rise, to keep the cosmos in balance. In temples across the land, priests chanted prayers to these three eternal guardians. Hail to you, Anubis, guide of the lost and protector of the dead. Hail to you, Thoth, scribe of the gods, whose words weigh eternity. Hail to you, Maat, feather of truth, heart of the universe. Even now, when the desert wind sighs through the ruins of ancient tombs, it seems to carry their voices, the faint sound of scales, shifting of pens upon papyrus, of a feather brushing against eternity. And in that whisper one feels the essence of Egypt's faith, that death is not to be feared but understood, that the end is a doorway, not an abyss, that truth and balance are the keys to everlasting peace. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Anubis still waits in the quiet halls of the underworld, patient and watchful. Thoth still writes upon the scroll of time, and Maat still stands with her feather holding the universe in perfect, fragile equilibrium. And as the night deepens, you might imagine your own heart steady within your chest, beating softly light, as the feather of Maat in harmony with the eternal rhythm of the world. The shadow of chaos set, and Apophis. The night deepens over the sands, the stars burn cold and distant above the desert, and the wind carries a low, restless moan. Beyond the glow of the temples, beyond the fertile valley of the Nile, lies the endless red waste, the land of storms and silence, of dust and fire. It is here that the forces of chaos dwell, where light struggles to endure. This is the realm of Set, god of the desert, of thunder and fury, of storms that tear through order like claws through silk. To the Egyptians, Set was both feared and revered, the embodiment of all that was wild, violent, and untamed. He was the red god, the one who raged when the world grew too still. But even chaos has a place in the balance of Maat. Set was born of Nut and Geb, brother to Osiris, Isis, and Nephthys. From his earliest days he was unlike the others. Where Osiris shone with wisdom, Set burned with power. Where Isis healed, he struck. His eyes were bright as lightning, his voice like wind howling through the dunes. He ruled the barren lands where the Nile could not reach the dry borders, where serpents coiled and sandstorms rose without warning. And yet even in the heart of chaos there was purpose. When the sun god Ra journeyed each night through the underworld, it was Set who stood at the prow of the solar barque's spear in hand to defend him from the eternal serpent of darkness, Apophis. Apophis, or Apep as he was also known, was not a god but a force older than creation. Born from the remains of the chaos that existed before the world began, he coiled in the deepest waters of none, vast and formless. His body was endless shadow, his eyes burning with hatred of light. Each night when Ra's golden boat entered the underworld, Apophis rose from the black waters, his scales glistening like oil, his jaws wide enough to devour the sun itself. The gods of Ra's retinue trembled when the serpent approached. The stars dimmed, the river froze in terror, and the world above held its breath. But Set, mighty, fierce, unyielding, stood firm. He shouted into the darkness, his voice echoing across eternity. "You shall not pass the light, serpent. The sun is eternal, and so am I." He thrust his spear of fire into the beast's coiling mass, striking again and again as the serpent writhed and screamed. The clash of their powers shook the heavens. Thunder rolled across the desert, and lightning split the horizon, the echoes of Set's battle echoing even in the mortal world. At last Apophis fell back into the abyss, his body shattered, his darkness scattered. Ra's light continued its course, rising once more at dawn. The world was saved for another day. Thus, though Set had slain his brother Osiris and warred against Horus, he was still part of the divine order. His rage, his chaos, his strength, all were necessary to defend creation from the greater void. Without Set, the serpent would devour the sun, and all would return to nothing. It was this paradox that lay at the heart of Egyptian belief, that even destruction has purpose, even chaos can serve balance. In the oldest hymns, priests praised Set for his ferocity, even as they feared his wrath. "Hail to you, Set mighty, one of the desert lord of the Red Lands. defender of Ra who strikes down the Serpent of Night. But as the centuries passed, the people's love for Set waned. His murder of Osiris, his rebellion against Ma'at, and his battles with Horus darkened his name. He became a god of exile, worshipped mostly in secret or in far-off temples along Egypt's borders. Still, the wise remembered that he was part of the balance. They knew that light cannot exist without shadow, that peace cannot endure without the challenge of conflict. In the deserts, where no life could thrive, Set's winds still shaped the dunes, harsh but necessary, clearing the old to make way for the new. And Apophis, he never truly died. Each night, as Ra's barque descended into the underworld, the serpent rose again, endless and hungry. The battle between Set and Apophis was not one of victory or defeat, but of eternal renewal, a struggle that must continue for the world to remain alive. When thunder rolled across the horizon, the Egyptians said it was Set's roar, echoing through the heavens, reminding the serpent that light would not yield. When lightning flashed over the desert, they saw his spear descending, striking at the darkness that sought to swallow creation. Yet Set was more than a destroyer. He was also the strength within every storm. He was the courage to face the unknown, the force that tests the heart and forges resilience. Even Horus, his rival, came to understand that without Set's chaos, his own order would weaken. And so the gods, in their wisdom, granted Set dominion over the wild places, the deserts, the thunder, and the lonely edges of the world. There his power would remain contained, yet vital, a boundary between the ordered world and the void beyond. In this way, Egypt's faith mirrored life itself, that light and darkness are bound together, that peace is born from struggle, that every dawn is earned through the battle of the night. The priests of Ra would tell this story at sunrise as the first rays broke across the horizon. See how the sun returns, behold the victory of light. Ra has passed through the Duat once more, and Set has struck down the serpent. Praise the strength that guards the dawn. And so with each new morning, Egypt celebrated the triumph of order over chaos, but also gave silent thanks to the warrior of the red sands whose fury kept the darkness at bay. Even now, as storms sweep across the desert, one can imagine the ancient battle raging, still the hiss of Apophis beneath the thunder, the flash of Set's spear in the lightning. The endless clash of creation and destruction forever bound together beneath the gaze of the stars. For in the Egyptian soul there was no simple good or evil, only balance. And the world endures, not because chaos is gone, but because it is met again and again by those who choose the light. The faces of love and fury, Hathor, Bastet, and Sekhmet. Morning spreads across Egypt, bathing the land in soft honeyed light. The Nile gleams like a ribbon of gold winding through green fields, and the temples shimmer as though kissed by heaven itself. After the long night of storms and shadow, the air feels gentle again, sweet, fragrant, alive. It is the realm of the goddesses of love, beauty, music, and fierce protection, Hathor, Bastet, and Sekhmet, three divine faces of the same radiant power. Each of them carries the warmth of the sun, yet each expresses it differently. Hathor is the tenderness that comforts, Bastet the joy that protects, Sekhmet the fire that defends. Together they embody the full spectrum of divine emotion, from laughter to rage, from dance to destruction, from affection to vengeance. Hathor, lady of the sky, mistress of joy. She is the soft light of morning, the golden glow of life itself. Hathor, whose name means the house of Horus, is the celestial mother, the goddess of beauty, love, fertility, music, and delight. Her image is radiant, a woman crowned with a sun disk between cow horns, her smile serene, her eyes filled with compassion. In myth, she was born from Ra's own eye, sent forth to bring warmth and happiness to the world. When she danced, flowers bloomed. When she sang, the Nile rose in joy. To the farmers, she was the mother of plenty. To the women of Egypt, she was the guardian of the womb and the heart. To travelers, the gentle protector who guided them beneath the western stars. Temples to Hathor rose across Egypt, but her most sacred home was at Dendera, where priests and musicians offered her songs of devotion as the scent of incense drifted upward. Hail to you, Hathor, lady of love, you who dance upon the wind, whose laughter stirs the lotus to bloom. Your face is the dawn, your breath the perfume of spring. She was the goddess of joy, but also of comfort. The Egyptians believed she welcomed the dead into the afterlife, giving them milk from a sacred cow and soothing their fears. And when the world grew weary or hearts grew heavy, it was said that she descended to bring peace once more, a reminder that love, too, is divine strength. Sekhmet, the lioness of fire and healing. But from that same love came fury. For when compassion is betrayed, when harmony is broken, gentleness can become flame. From Hathor's own heart was born Sekhmet, her fierce and terrible aspect, the lioness goddess of war, plague, and healing. Her story begins in an age when humans turned away from Mahat. Their pride and cruelty angered Ra, who looked upon his creation and saw that it had forgotten balance. To restore order, he sent his eye, the blazing essence of his power, to punish the wicked. That eye took form as Sekhmet. She descended upon the earth as a storm of fire. Her mane blazed like the sun, her breath scorched the land. Villages trembled, rivers ran red, and the cries of the guilty filled the air. Her hunger for vengeance became unstoppable until even Ra, seeing the devastation, feared his own creation. He sent messengers to plead with her, but her roar drowned their words. So Ra devised a plan. He ordered the priests to brew 7,000 jars of beer and dye them crimson so that it shone like blood beneath the sun. Sekhmet came upon the fields and saw what she believed to be the aftermath of battle. She drank deeply, and as she drank, her fury softened. The fire in her eyes dimmed, and her rage gave way to laughter. In that moment, she became Hathor once more, gentle, loving, renewed. The Egyptians told this story to remind themselves that even divine anger could be transformed, that destruction and mercy were two sides of the same light. Sekhmet's temples, especially at Memphis, were places not only of worship, but of medicine. Her priests were healers her name invoked to cure disease and ward off pestilence. For who better to heal than she, who understands pain? Thus Sekhmet was both plague and remedy, the lioness who strikes and the physician who restores. She taught that strength is sacred, but it must serve balance, not pride. Bastet, the gentle protector of home. If Sekhmet was the lioness of the open desert, Bastet was her reflection in the hearth and home, the domestic cat goddess of joy, fertility, and safety. Her image softened over time from a fierce lioness to a sleek, playful feline, yet her power never waned. Bastet was the goddess of households, of music, dance, and the simple happiness of life. Her temples, especially at Bubastis, were filled with laughter and celebration. During her festivals, men and women would sail up the Nile in boats adorned with garlands, singing and clapping, offering flowers and perfumes in her honor. Cats sacred to Bastet roamed freely through homes and temples alike. They were her messengers, her guardians against chaos and evil spirit. To harm a cat was unthinkable a sin against the goddess herself. Even the pharaohs kept her image close for Bastet's protection, extended to all. Yet beneath her gentleness was hidden strength. When danger threatened, Bastet became swift and fearless, defending her children with the ferocity of Sekhmet herself. She was love tempered by vigilance, playfulness edged with purpose, a reminder that kindness does not mean weakness. To the people she embodied, joy made sacred. In their songs, she was both mother and companion, O Bastet, sweet of face, whose eyes shine like the morning, protect our homes and our hearts. Drive away the shadows that linger, and fill our days with light. Together Hathor, Sekhmet, and Bastet formed a trinity of divine emotion, love, wrath, and protection, each transforming into the other as the world required. In their stories, the Egyptians found the reflection of their own lives, that the same heart that loves can also burn, that joy can arise from sorrow, that peace is born through courage. Theirs was not a love untouched by struggle, but one made sacred through it. Hathor's laughter, Bastet's tenderness, Sekhmet's roar, all were the voices of the same eternal truth, that creation endures through compassion, and that even in rage there lies the seed of renewal. As dusk falls, the temples of these goddesses glow with torchlight. The scent of myrrh fills the air. Somewhere in the distance a cat's purr mingles with the hum of a sacred hymn. And in that sound, gentle, fierce, eternal Egypt's heart still beats. The divine craftsmen Ptah, Khnum, and Hapi. The day drifts into late afternoon, and the sun turns to bronze above the slow curve of the Nile. Its light falls upon the quiet temples and the murmuring workshops of craftsmen, men who carve, mold, and shape their hands, guided by invisible wisdom. For in the heart of Egyptian faith, creation was not a single act long ago, but a continuous work, an eternal crafting. The gods who shaped the world never ceased their labor, and among them stood three mighty artisans of existence itself, Ptah, Khnum, and Hapi, the divine makers, sustainers, and nourishers of all life. Ptah, the maker of the world, in the great city of Memphis, where the desert meets the fertile plain, the people worshipped Ptah, the god of creation through thought and word. He was not the loud fire of Ra, nor the hidden breath of Amun, but the quiet mind that conceived the cosmos. His skin gleamed blue-green like the metal of the earth, and he was wrapped in a shroud of purity, holding the scepter of life, stability, and power. Ankh-Jed was. The priests of Memphis taught that before all things there was Ptah's heart, and Ptah's tongue, the seat of thought and the instrument of speech. He imagined the world, and by speaking its name, it came into being. Mountains rose at his command. The Nile flowed because he willed it. He shaped not from chaos, but from idea. To the craftsman, Ptah was the patron and protector. Every builder, mason, sculptor, and potter prayed to him before beginning their work. For he was the god who created gods, who built the heavens as an architect builds a temple. His workshop was the universe, His tools were wisdom and word. In the oldest hymns of Memphis they sang of him thus: Ptah, Lord of truth, who made the world by his thought, who fashioned the gods, whose tongue is fire, and whose breath is life. All that is shaped by your command. His creation was peaceful, deliberate, not the battle of storm and serpent, but the quiet act of design. Through Ptah the Egyptians saw the sacred in craftsmanship, the divine in the shaping of stone and bronze. Every statue raised, every temple carved was an echo of the god's eternal artistry. Khnum, the potter of life. Far to the south, where the Nile winds through rocky cliffs and golden sands, another creator worked, Khnum, the ram-headed god of the cataracts, the guardian of the river's source. His domain was the place where the Nile began a mystery known to no mortal, and there he kept his workshop, eternal and hidden. Khnum's hands were strong and patient, stained with the clay of creation. Upon his potter's wheel he shaped every living being, humans, gods, and spirits alike. With each spin he formed the body from the silt of the Nile, moist and fertile, and breathed into it the spark of life. In Egyptian art he is shown sitting before his wheel, crafting both child and soul, while beside him stands Heket, the frog-headed goddess of birth, waiting to bless each new being as it enters the world. The Egyptians said that when a mother was pregnant, Khnum had already formed her child in his divine workshop, shaping its limbs, its heart, its destiny. But Khnum was not only the maker of flesh, he was the mender of souls. When someone grew ill or broken, they prayed that Khnum would place them back upon his wheel and reshape them anew. His work was never finished, for life itself was his art. At his temple in Elephantine, where the Nile first entered Egypt, pilgrims came to offer clay and water, asking the god to bless their lives. The priests poured sacred water from jars carved in his likeness, reciting, Khnum, Lord of the potter's wheel, who fashioned us from river clay, shape our hearts once more, let your hands guide our days. Through Khnum the people understood that they were not separate from the land, but born of it, that their bodies were moulded from the same silt that nourished the crops, that when they returned to the earth, they returned to him. Hapi, spirit of the flood. And yet even the works of Ptah and Khnum required one more force to sustain them, the water that gave Egypt its soul. That power was Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood, the nourisher of all creation. Each year, when the rains fell in the south and the river swelled, Egypt held its breath. The people watched the horizon for the first rise of Sirius, the star of Isis, heralding Hapi's coming. Soon the river would overflow its banks, spreading rich black silt across the fields, the lifeblood of the two lands. Hapi was neither man nor woman, but a gentle balance of both, depicted with broad chest and full belly, his body blue like the waters. He carried offerings of fish and fruit, symbolizing the abundance he brought. He was joy itself, the living pulse of the Nile. When the flood came, the people celebrated. They sang hymns to Hapi, offering bread, flowers, and wine upon the river's surface. Hail to you, Hapi, who comes forth from this earth, who nourishes the fields, who fills the barns with grain, whose breath brings life to all. Without Hapi, Egypt would be only desert. With him, it became paradise, a ribbon of green through endless gold. His coming was both divine and ordinary, a miracle written into the rhythm of the seasons. Ki se ti tstri ti, the eternal workshop together, Ptah, Khnum, and Hapi form the sacred triad of creation. Ptah conceived the design of the world, Khnum shaped it by hand, Hapi sustained it with his waters. Their unity reflected the essence of Egyptian faith that creation was not a single act, but an ongoing harmony thought form and life working together in eternal balance. In their temples the air smelled of clay and incense. The sounds of chisels, of spinning wheels, of chanting priests blended into a single melody, the song of creation itself. Every craftsman, every farmer, every artist felt that they shared in the gods' work. To build, to shape, to create these were sacred acts, reflections of divine purpose. As evening falls and the last light fades upon the river, the Nile seems to breathe. You can almost see Ptah's thought shimmering in the water's reflection, Khnum's invisible hands moulding the current, and Hapi's spirit rising with the mist. For Egypt was not merely made by the gods, it was continually being made each moment, each flood, each breath. And so as night descends once more, the river hums its eternal hymn, the same melody sung since the dawn of creation. Life flows, the hand shapes, the word endures, the gods create, and the world is born again. The protectors of home and birth, Nephthys, Taweret, and Bes. The desert night has settled again, soft, cool, and quiet. The Nile glows under the moonlight, winding like a silver serpent through the sleeping land. The grand temples stand in solemn silence, their columns reaching toward the stars. Yet beyond these sacred halls and distant gods, life continues in humble homes, in the laughter of families, in the cries of newborns, in the warmth of firelight flickering against mud-brick walls. Here among the ordinary dwell gods, no less powerful protectors of hearth and family, of childbirth and dreams. They are the gentle guardians who walk unseen through doorways and cradle shadows in their hands. Nephthys, Taweret, and Bes, the unseen trinity of comfort and protection. Nephthys, the silent guardian of the dead and the lost. She stands in twilight, neither day nor night, neither fully of the living nor of the dead. Nephthys, sister of Isis and Osiris, is the quiet goddess who moves between worlds. Her name means Lady of the Enclosure, for she guards thresholds between life and death, grief and hope, fear and peace. Where Isis is devotion and magic, Nephthys is mourning and mercy. She weeps not in despair, but in love. When Osiris was slain, she did not flee from the darkness, she went to him. Alongside her sister, she searched the land for his scattered body. She anointed him with oil, wrapped him in linen, whispered words of comfort as he passed into the next world. In every Egyptian tomb her image appears beside Isis, her hands raised in protection over the sarcophagus. Together the sisters spread their wings like great kites, shielding the soul on its journey to Osiris's realm. Their lament, sung at funerals, was said to call the spirit gently toward peace. Go in safety, O beloved one. The sisters guard your path. Isis at your head, Nephthys at your feet, they open the way of light. But Nephthys was not only the mourner of kings, she was the comforter of every grieving heart, the mother who stands at the edge of the bed, the whisper in the ear of the dying, the soft voice that says, "You are not alone." To the living, she brought the peace of night's embrace. Her presence was felt in the hush before dawn, in the sigh of the desert wind. She watched over those who worked through the darkness, guiding travelers home and protecting them from spirits that wandered in the shadows. Taweret, the Great One, guardian of mothers and children. From the stillness of morning rises another sound, the cry of a newborn child. In that cry lives the voice of Taweret, the great hippopotamus goddess of childbirth, motherhood, and protection. Her form is strange yet tender, the heavy belly of a pregnant woman, the legs and jaws of a hippo, the claws of a lion, the tail of a crocodile, a combination of all that is strong, fierce, and nurturing. Though she may look fearsome, her heart is pure gentleness. She was the goddess who guarded every home where a child was soon to be born. Her image, carved upon amulets and painted upon bedroom walls, warded off evil and brought courage to women in labor. In the flickering lamplight, mothers prayed to her, whispering, "O Taweret, Great One, drive away the demons of the night. Let your strength be our shield. Let your roar be our safety." Taweret's breath was the lullaby of the river. Her shadow was the comfort of the hearth. She protected women during childbirth and infants through their first fragile years. When a baby slept peacefully, it was said that Taweret stood by the bedside, her great hands folded over her heart, her tusked face smiling softly. The people of Egypt adored her not as a distant goddess, but as family. Her statues were kept in homes, not temples. To look upon her was to feel reassurance, a reminder that even the divine could be motherly and kind. She was also protector of rebirth, guarding the horizon where the sun rose from Nut's womb each morning. Just as she shielded infants entering the world, she also watched over Ra's daily birth from the underworld, ensuring the dawn would return. Bes, the dwarf, god of laughter and protection, and in the corners of these same homes, among the laughter and the songs, danced a small, cheerful god with a wild beard and lion's mane. Bes, the dwarf protector of joy and family. His round face was fierce, yet smiling, his tongue sticking out playfully to scare away evil spirits. He was the god of laughter, music, sleep, and love, the joyful guardian of daily life. Unlike the solemn gods of temples, Bes belonged to the people. He lived in their houses, not in the heavens. He protected them not with thunder or flame, but with jokes, songs, and laughter, weapons against fear. At weddings, musicians carved his image upon their instruments, believing he brought happiness and fertility. In bedrooms, his figure was etched on headboards and painted on walls, ensuring peaceful dreams. Mothers told their children that Bes would stand watch at night, sword in hand, roaring at the demons of nightmares until they fled into the dark. His presence filled Egypt with warmth and mirth. The priests said, "Where Bes dances, evil hides. Where Bes laughs, sickness flees. He is small in stature, but vast in heart." Bes reminded humanity that joy itself was divine, that laughter could be a form of worship, that even in sorrow there was power in happiness. He was the spirit of celebration, of drums, beating of flutes, playing of dancers, twirling beneath the stars. And when the storms of life grew too heavy, it was Bes who brought relief, who lifted the weight of fear with a smile. Together, Nephthys, Taweret, and Bes were the guardians of the ordinary, the protectors of birth, sleep, love, and loss. While mighty Ra sailed the heavens and Osiris ruled the underworld, they watched over the spaces in between the homes, the hearths, the fragile moments that make up a human life. Their presence whispered that divinity was not found only in the temples of kings, but also in the laughter of a child, the warmth of a mother's hand, the comfort of night's embrace. When the sun set over Egypt and the people drew their curtains against the desert wind, they prayed not only to the distant gods of heaven, but also to these companions of home. Bless our sleep, O gentle ones, guard our dreams and our hearths. Let the night pass in peace and the dawn find us safe. The flame flickers, the river sighs. Somewhere in the quiet a baby stirs and is soothed again. The gods of home still keep their watch unseen, but ever near. The eternal balance, Ma'at, and the legacy of the god. The night has deepened into stillness. The air above the Nile glows faintly with the shimmer of starlight reflected on its surface. The world feels calm as though every breath, every ripple of water, every heartbeat of creation has fallen into rhythm. This is the quiet that the Egyptians called Ma'at, the balance of all things, the harmony between heaven, earth, and the unseen. Ma'at was not merely a goddess, she was the principle upon which existence rested, truth, justice, and the sacred order of the universe. Without her, the sun would falter, the Nile would forget its flood, and the stars would lose their way across the night sky. She is often pictured as a woman wearing a single feather, the feather of truth, upon her brow. Light, pure, unwavering. It is this same feather that rests upon the scales of the afterlife when the hearts of mortals are weighed. For to live in Ma'at was to live truthfully, gently, honorably, to act in accordance with the balance that sustained the world, the goddess of harmony and truth. The Egyptians believed that when Ra first rose from the waters of chaos, Ma'at came into being beside him, not created, but emerging naturally from the act of order itself. Where chaos had once ruled, Ma'at brought stillness and meaning. The gods themselves lived by her law. Even the mighty Ra and Osiris bowed to her presence. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, wrote her name upon every decree. Isis invoked her in spells. Horus ruled in her stead, and Anubis measured hearts against her feather in the hall of two truths. Every day, as Ra's solar barque set sail across the heavens, it was said that Ma'at guided his path. Her feather was the compass of the cosmos, ensuring that dawn followed dusk, that seasons returned, that chaos never conquered. In temples and courts, in fields and markets, the people of Egypt sought to live by Ma'at's example. The pharaoh himself was not merely a ruler, but the living guardian of Ma'at on earth, the one tasked with keeping peace, fairness, and prosperity within his lands. When he judged disputes, he did so not by strength or desire, but by the measure of balance. When he built temples, it was not only to honor the gods, but to preserve the divine order between them. Every decree, every law, every ritual was an echo of that ancient truth. Without balance, there is no life. The weaving of balance. To the Egyptians, Ma'at was not a passive idea, but a living rhythm that flowed through everything from the rise of the Nile to the course of the stars. A man who cheated another disrupted Ma'at. A king who ruled unjustly disturbed her. But one who gave fair measure, who spoke honestly, who honored his word, he upheld her, and the world was made whole again. This belief shaped all of Egyptian life. Farmers left part of their harvest to feed the poor. Scribes recorded not only wealth but offerings to the gods. Judges wore her feather as a symbol of truth. Even the smallest act of kindness, a cup of water given to a stranger, a word spoken in mercy, was said to strengthen Ma'at's harmony across the cosmos. Her wisdom is preserved in ancient words carved upon temple walls and papyrus scrolls, like quiet ripples across the centuries, speak truth. Act with fairness. Do not turn away from the needy. Do not disturb the balance of the land. They are simple teachings, yet they were believed to hold the weight of eternity, the legacy of the gods. As time passed and the old temples began to fade beneath the sands, the stories of Egypt's gods remained not as forgotten myths, but as whispers of eternal wisdom. Each god had given something to the world, something that endured beyond stone and time. Ra gave light and renewal, the promise that dawn follows every darkness. Osiris gave hope that death is but another kind of life. Isis gave love that devotion conquers even despair. Horus gave courage that justice and strength can restore what has been lost. Thoth gave knowledge that words and learning preserve the world. Anubis gave guidance that even in death no soul walks alone. Hathor gave joy that laughter and beauty are forms of worship. Ptah gave creation the sacred gift of craftsmanship and imagination. Khnum gave life, moulding mankind from the clay of the Nile. Hapi gave nourishment, the river's unending flow of plenty. Nephthys, Taweret, and Bastet gave comfort, protection for every home and every heart. And Ma'at bound them all together like invisible thread woven through the tapestry of existence, holding their stories in perfect eternal balance. To live in Egypt was to walk within this harmony, to see divinity not as distant or separate, but as ever-present. Every sunrise, every flood, every grain of sand was a part of the sacred whole. The eternal return. Even now, as the centuries drift away like desert dust, the spirit of Ma'at endures. The ruins of Egypt, the pillars of Karnak, the faces of Abu Simbel, the tombs of the Valley of Kings, all still stand in alignment with the stars, reflecting the order that once governed gods and men alike. When the wind sighs across the pyramids, it seems to echo her truth that the universe breathes through balance, and all life depends upon the harmony of opposites, light and shadow, joy and sorrow, life and death. The Egyptians understood what so many after them would forget, that power without justice collapses, that knowledge without kindness darkens, that life without love turns barren. They saw the gods not as separate rulers, but as reflections of the same divine equilibrium, each necessary, each eternal, each reminding humankind that harmony is sacred. And so their civilization, though long fallen, still speaks through the ages, through stone, through story, through the river that still flows where they once prayed. The Nile still rises each year, spreading its dark, fertile silt across the valley. The same stars still burn above, tracing their ancient paths. The same wind still moves through the reeds, whispering the old hymns. Perhaps if you listen closely, you can still hear them. Truth endures. Love renews. Order prevails. The gods walk with us unseen but eternal. Ma'at remains in every sunrise, in every honest word, in every act of kindness that keeps the world in balance. And so as the river sighs and the stars gleam above the sleeping land, Egypt's story closes not with an ending, but with a breath. The gods rest, but their harmony lingers. The light fades, but it will return. The cycle continues forever, balanced forever, alive. For Ma'at, the heart of all creation, never dies.